Now I see places and faces, things you ain't never thought about.
Hi, we're here today with Lori Hoberman of the Hoberman Law Group. She used to be at Chadbourne and Park and opened her own office. Tell me what made you decide to do that.
Well, thank you, first of all. It's great to be here. I had wanted to start my own law firm for a while. I've been advising entrepreneurs for many, many years. And I figured it was really time for me to start practicing what I preach. So I was looking to do this for a while, and then finally 2 years ago, I resigned from Chadbourne and launched the Hoberman Law Group. And our focus is really just on entrepreneurs.
So you have quite a few tech companies that come to you.
Yes, startups, some early stage after funding, some mid-stage, some later stage. We kind of represent companies, venture-backed companies along that whole spectrum. And the industries reflect the flavor of the month of the New York venture community. So we work with a lot of fintech, we work with some gaming, we work with life science and bio, high-end fashion, e-commerce, really whatever's hot in New York City in the venture market at the time.
When do startups or tech companies in general, when do they start to need a lawyer? At what point? I'm sure they can't afford it in the beginning, right?
In the beginning, it's probably hard. In the beginning, the one thing you want to do is you want to make sure you start off right. I like a limited liability company. So that's really all you need to know in the beginning. You want to make sure you have a good non-disclosure agreement, a good agreement where your employees are tied up so that they can't take away your IP. But there's not a whole lot you need in the beginning. A good time for an entrepreneur to talk to a lawyer is just to make sure that the beginning stages are set up in the right way, but there's not a whole lot to do at that point. It gets busier when the entrepreneur is raising capital or hiring employees or looking to protect their IP. That's where it really starts to become important to have a lawyer on board to help do the right thing.
Do you have an example of a tech client that came to you with a problem and you helped them solve it, or came to you with just something they needed done and how you ended up doing it? Just so I could give an example.
Sure. So we work with companies all the time at the very early stages. So entrepreneurs come and talk to us. And for example, we occasionally get entrepreneurs who are looking to launch but maybe not raise capital right away. And one of the biggest mistakes I see that happens for companies in that stage is that they get advice sometimes to form as a corporate entity. Much better if they start life off as a limited liability company. So when we see these companies and they come to us and they say, well, they've heard or they've read about the fact that venture capital investors will only invest in corporate entities, for example. That's true. VCs will only invest in corporate entities. But chances are when you're first starting out, you're a long way away from that venture capital investment. It's really nice to be able to form a limited liability company and know that as you're putting money into it, you're going to get the benefit of those tax losses, which you don't get in a corporate form. So we advise to start off the right way from the beginning as a limited liability company, unless you know that venture capital funding is imminent, 3 to 6 months out. And then, from a tax perspective, you get the benefit of those losses. As long as you've formed in Delaware, it's very easy to convert the entity to a corporation. And you go from there. It's a very good way to start. Another thing we see all the time is companies that come on board and they've brought employees on, well, not employees at that point, probably consultants on board to help them. And these consultants maybe have not signed the right sort of invention assignment language. We see this frequently. It's very important for companies, before they hire anyone, whether it's an employee or consultant, anybody who's touching their intellectual property, to sign something called a Proprietary Information and Invention Assignment Agreement, a PIIA. What that means is the employee or consultant agrees to keep everything confidential, and they agree that everything they create while they're working with the company is the company's property.
And what if they don't? What if they don't read the contract or they don't agree with the contract? They signed it. Now there's all these problems.
Well, then the company has a contractual right to go after them as long as they've signed it. And investors who put money into these companies will want the companies to be able to represent that everybody who's working with the company, whether as an employee or consultant, has signed that type of an agreement. It's very important to make sure that anything that's being developed for the company belongs to the company.
So let's take an industry. Well, let's take our company, our organization, Disruptive Technologists in New York City. I went to an accountant, and actually he talked me out of being a nonprofit. I was thinking that we could help people in New York get inside the minds of technologists, disruptors, and see how they went about doing what they're doing, and it would be like a learning thing. And he dissuaded me, saying that it's a lot of paperwork.
To be a not-for-profit? Well, the big paperwork element of a not-for-profit is that you need to file public tax returns, and you got quarterly filings, all of which are public. That's paperwork. It definitely is. But there are big benefits to forming as a not-for-profit. In addition to PR that you get from being a not-for-profit, there are definite benefits. There are grants that are available to you. There's money that might come from foundations that are available to you as a not-for-profit that wouldn't otherwise be available to you. So there are definitely benefits. Something you can consider is having both a for-profit arm and a not-for-profit arm. We work with companies that do that. We work with some companies in the life science industry where they have a product that's clearly, they clearly look at that product as being a profit-generating product. But they want to be able to offer it to countries where maybe it's underprivileged or where there is a not-for-profit motive. So they set up a supporting organization, an entity, a not-for-profit organization that then they can go out and do that not-for-profit, and they can be eligible for grants within that entity. So both function together.
When people come to you with their company ideas, do you give them advice? Or do they get their advice from their investors?
I'm doing this a long time. I am a co-founder. Actually, I was a co-founder of a startup in the mobile space that exited a few years ago. So I have an understanding of the business side of things as well. So some advice that I have given when companies come to me with a set view of what they want to be doing, there have been times where, especially from an advertising standpoint, where I've been able to suggest things where the company might be able to shift a little bit and target more advertising, or maybe shift a little bit and fit within one of the more popular flavors of the month, so to speak, from an investment perspective. I was working with a company that had a green way of processing trash, and the unit that they were using had lots of space around it that could be useful for advertising purposes. And I talked to them about maybe doing that as an extra, monetizing the space. And that was a valuable new revenue stream for them.
Great. What made you be interested in tech?
Love technology. And I think some of my clients are constantly trying to keep me cool. So I'm always learning. What I love about it is I'm constantly learning something new. We work with such innovative and fearless entrepreneurs who are coming up with such new and exciting technologies all the time, and it's fun to learn about it. It's fun to beta test things. It's fun to be a part of something that's so unique and original.
We all woke up this morning to find out that we have a new president, Trump, and noticed that the Wall Street is slumping, and I was just wondering, do you think the tech environment in New York City will be affected by this new change of regime?
So I'm hoping that the business side of things is not impacted negatively by this. Where I have some concerns is how it will impact workforces that come from overseas. And with those workforces come significant intellect and tech skills. So I have real questions as to how that's going to be impacted. Donald Trump is a businessman. I hope that he sees the value of being an entrepreneur and the value of what these people who come with the workforce or the intellect that comes from overseas brings to the entrepreneurial community. But we'll see.
Let's catch up with you in a year and find out what you think about the whole thing with the whole Trump business ideas.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you so much, Lori, for being with us, and we'll have you on again.
Thank you.
Now I see places and faces and things you